I'm sure I've said it before, but the art direction of a game can go a long way in capturing the interest of potential buyers. Cantata is one such example of this, because the abstract, colorful art style of the character portraits and the sprite art of the actual game made it stand out in my Steam discovery queue. At first glance, it appeared to be a tactics game with some grand strategy elements, so I kept it in the back of my mind for when I was hungry for that type of experience. I will say that this review is largely from the single-player campaign perspective. There is a multiplayer mode, but it appears that only local lobbies are available at the time of this review, and I don't think the core gameplay would be wildly different from the campaign. Cantata takes place on an alien world called Sheol, where 3 factions have found themselves in conflict for various reasons. The factions are the 111th Reign of Harmony and Prosperity, the People of the Sun and Shadow, and the Unified Spirit. But for the sake of simplicity, I'll refer to them as the humans, the natives, and the synthetics, respectively. The humans have arrived on Sheol with the goal of locating resources and expanding their empire. The synthetics are seeking a means of preserving their own existence, and the natives seek to eradicate the off-worlders that are disrupting the balance and harming their planet. Each faction has their own themes and mechanics that make them unique from one another. For example, the humans are focused on gathering resources and overrunning enemies with large groups, while the natives are able to use the remains of their defeated enemies as resources for producing more units. The motivations and characterizations of each faction are very well executed, and as you uncover mysteries of the planet Sheol, I found that I was excited to see how these narrative lines would resolve as time went on. The core gameplay of Cantata is to explore a map covered by a fog of war and control regions to construct buildings for the purpose of generating resources or producing units. In order to control a region, you need to have enough pressure generated from your structures or units within the region. If an enemy faction is also present, you'll need to defeat their units and destroy their structures to exert more pressure and gain control. Adjacent controlled regions share your pool of resources, so maintaining control of regions effectively creates a supply chain. In order to share resources with regions you do not control and mount an offensive, each faction has a different approach. For example, the humans can build outposts that are static structures that make your resources available within a specific range, while the synthetics can build a unit that acts as a mobile supply depot and transport. Adding to the complexity of strategy, each region on the map has a limit to the number of production buildings that it can hold. I believe this is to discourage players from turtling in a single region and force players to engage with the exploring and capturing, but this isn't without flaws. As you move further and further away from your starting region, it can be cumbersome to move units to catch up to your main forces if you've built unit production structures in those early regions. You're able to remotely destroy buildings to free up space and construct a different building type, but if you don't have other assets to maintain your pressure, doing so can lose control of the region and disrupt your supply chain. The flow of Cantata is broken into turns for each player in a given scenario, and each turn refills a pool of energy you're able to spend to construct buildings or produce units. Units all have one free attack and movement action per turn, but you can also spend energy to perform additional surge actions if a unit has the ability to do so. In the campaign, there are objectives that you need to accomplish to complete the scenario, and there's a turn limit that you must complete all objectives within. I think this is also a means of encouraging the player to explore the map, but given the other limiting factors and the fact that discovering objectives adds turns back to the limit, its inclusion feels redundant. These systems all lay the foundation of Cantata: control regions, build supply chains, and explore the map to locate objectives. On paper, these are engaging systems that allow for interesting, emergent storytelling in each scenario, but I think the strengths of these systems are lost in the way they're utilized. There are several design decisions within Cantata that all compound to create poor game feel, the biggest offenders being the UI and the pace of the game. It's often difficult to locate the information you're looking for because it's relegated into a specific interface. For example, to know how many resources you have, you need to click into a controlled region that's connected to your supply chain and view the region UI. There are also tooltips that appear when hovering your mouse cursor over UI elements, but these pop-ups will only persist when the bar below the card title fills. This is great and often required to get more information about elements within these windows, but every tooltip exhibits this behavior. This means if you're a slow reader like me, you may persist a tooltip within a larger pop-up that blocks information you're interested in, and the only way to dismiss these sub-tooltips is to dismiss the entire larger window, meaning you're frequently dismissing and reopening tooltips to continue examining elements. As for the pacing, the large size of the maps makes campaign scenarios unnecessarily long in my opinion. The longer I played, the more I noticed the game falling into the same pattern, filling early regions with resource-generating buildings to avoid new units making long treks to catch up with my main forces, and constructing unit production buildings close to any discovered threats. CPU enemies don't naturally patrol or set out to pressure your controlled areas, and will often remain stationary until you reveal them on the map. Only then will they start to move and attack your units or structures. However, if none of your controlled assets are in range of the revealed enemy unit, they'll just randomly move within a small area. Since this behavior results in very little push and pull throughout the scenario, a majority of available turns are spent slowly navigating units across large amounts of empty space, which is further exacerbated by the inability to select and move multiple units at once. You can speed up a unit's movement by double-clicking the destination, but as you build a larger army, having to move everything individually becomes a laborious task, even with units that can act as a transport for other units. There's so much to like about Cantata. The art direction, the music, the narrative built around the alien world, but it all gets lost through poor implementation across massive maps that dilute the interesting components. I think Cantata could have been a standout title if the experience was tighter, but at the time of this review, it's far too little happening and far too much space. Thanks for watching, take care, and remember, keep having fun.